Welcome, folks, to another weekly edition of Freedom Hub. We're excited to have a topic that's interesting not only for Freedom Hub, but also for our weekly event on Wednesday, which is more focused on healthcare. And that is upgrading the healthcare system from one based on pill pushing to one more based on real health, holistic health. And let me share my screen really quick here to welcome folks to our show. And our website is your-mp.com. And under the Media Hub, at that link, if you wanted to click on it on your own, you'll see the guests each week. Notice, please, that Buy Me a Coffee icon. We are volunteers and have been hosting these two webinars weekly for 5 years. We just had our 400th episode, which was exciting to achieve that goal. Here are the two columns with each week's guest. You see on the right, Dr. McClure, who will talk about integrated care. And not only will he talk about that, but he will talk about it from a very interesting aspect, and that is the fact that he is a dentist, and not only a dentist, but one of these higher quality dentists. Sometimes they're called biocompatible dentists. Bottom line is they know a lot more about the mouth than your typical mainstream dentist. I've gone to one for years. We've had two others present over the years, Dr. Jerry Curatola and Dr. Richard Fisher, who, by the way, serves on the board of National Health Federation, for which I lobby, and which will have its monthly Zoom tomorrow at noon Eastern. Folks are definitely invited to that. And not only has Dr. McClure upgraded his practice to the higher quality biocompatible type, but he has done something that is really important to us because there is such disorganization among the integrated community. He tries to integrate his practice with other healers, other modalities, and he has started an association for that purpose called the National Integrated Health Association. And let me just show that really quickly here. Let's see, that is this website right here. He may show that on his slides that I will run through as he speaks, NIHADC.com. And I want to also just quickly advertise our Zoom tomorrow. I'll put all these in chat. We have a different integrated modality tomorrow on National Health Federation's monthly Zoom, homeopathy. It's under assault by the FDA. They want pre-approval of treatments from that school of medicine. And anyone who has gone through the last few years of tyranny from the COVID narrative knows that we have to upgrade our idea about health. And Dr. McClure is a fantastic person to do that. He is sometimes a partner of our absent co-host, Jim Graypeck, who is helping yet another Freedom Hub team member with a conference right now. And with that, I am going to stop my share. And let me see here. There's my stop share button. And Dr. McClure, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more if you like, and then I'll start the slideshow whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, you can put the first slide up if you want to, and I can kind of introduce and talk around that because part of my introduction is contained in that. And I just have, Charles, I just have my slideshow up. I don't see yours yet.
If someone else wants to unmute themselves, I'm sharing it, so I'm pretty sure folks are seeing it.
I'm seeing it, yes.
Yeah, it's showing.
Okay, good. Great. Okay, well, my name is Mark McClure. I'm a dentist, a biological dentist, been in the biological world for over 40 years. And I'm here to, the title really I want to talk about is critical mass and critical thinking in integrative medicine industry, because I've been involved in this for, oh gosh, 30 years with a focus on integrative medicine. Maybe we can advance the slide. I'm going to have to signal you to advance the slide, Charles, if you can, because
it's done.
Okay. Wait a minute. So, okay. So, that's who I am. And my big mentor in this has been Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. I think he's probably familiar with many of you. And then if we want to advance the slide one more time. This is a little bit of my experience. National Integrative Health Associates is an integrative medical, dental, naturopathic, and many other clinic that we've had in Washington, D.C. since 1995, when we had the idea that integrative medicine was going to be something that would be eventually the new medicine to hopefully replace some of the old medicine stuff or conventional medicine issues. That was our vision back then. Prior to that, I started the dental group, which was another part of Maryland, large dental practice, only dental, multiple practices. So I've been a kind of a starter of things and, and moving those things forward. Another part of my experience was with HMOs. That was in the 70s and 80s. And I like to joke and say everything I've had to do or endure from that point on has been my penance for having gotten involved in that. More to the point, with integrative medicine, I became a student first and then a provost and of Capital University of Integrative Medicine through most of my 10-year plus experience with that. That was a great opportunity of understanding and learning, because we had the ability to bring in just about anybody from the country, actually the world, to teach integrative medicine. And at that point, we're just, as we still are, we're trying to understand really what integrative medicine is. And that's kind of where a lot of my focus is going to be today, trying to help us understand that critical thinking and critical mass. That the critical mass part has come from 20 years of getting involved in how we can promote this in a way that would not be able to be overtaken by an industry that wants to undertake us. And then some of the other things on there is what you see. So the next slide is a little bit about something everybody I'm sure on this podcast understands, and that's our world is really in some sick shape. I say the best and the worst of worlds, because we understand that healthcare is a broken system, and most people understand that it needs to be changed. I don't think I have to go through that too much. It basically comes down to the fact that, as I see it, is that healthcare costs too much, and it's not taking care of most of the chronic problems that we are coming up with now. Now, delving into the chronic issues is where my professional career, both as an integrative medical doctor as well as a biological dentist, has focused. And my gleaning from Capital University and from my experience with Klinghardt and Mercola and Paladin and many others is that we're really treating, or I have to understand something that 20, 30 years ago, nobody understood at all. And that's this whole understanding of dysautonomia, or the neuroimmune system just not working correctly. So if we focus on that, we can understand a lot of the root causes that people can have. And we've divided it into 7. You're going to see this through my presentation, so there's no sense in, sit back and enjoy the trip here. The reasons for this is obviously our modern world has promoted this, and we basically suffer from too much of the, as my colleague Dr. Gant said, too much of the bad stuff, which can be divided into chemicals and heavy metals, and of course chronic infestations and other chronic problems like bowels and other kind of things. Basically a toxic overload that the neuroimmune system can't handle anymore, and of course it breaks down. Obviously not enough of the good stuff. These we all know, either because of the nutrient density of the foods and all the other kind of things that aren't putting the nutrition in. But then there's the reaction that's often misunderstood. We'll talk about this a lot more, because my focus is going to be the neuroimmune system, and that's hyperreacting to the good and the bad. Lots more autoimmune going on, In fact, it's going off the charts. But understanding as a biological medical guy, as well as dental and whatever, that your body hyperreacts to the things it can't deal with. The fourth is obviously psychoemotional, psychospiritual issues, limited beliefs, the stresses from the higher planes of human existence. Toxic foci is an interesting one. If you're involved in neural therapy, you know that very much. But if you're not, it's kind of like, what is he talking about? Well, these are electrical and often toxic pathologies that our body has to deal with that create electrical overload. Since the neuroimmune system is an electrical system, that electrical overload can overheat the wires, so to speak. Too much afferent or going to the brain stimulus of any of these things I've just talked about, but toxic foci being one of them. This is where scars from a Eastern medicine standpoint become a real big thing in neural therapy, because they create lots of electrical pathology, but also so does cavitations, root canals, toxic organs like tonsils that are inflamed, or appendixes or whatever. So this is a kind of a overload of the neuroimmune system from an electrical standpoint. Next is noxious energies. These are just rampant, and there's nobody out there protecting us. Ultimately, everything has to come down to what's the individual going to do for themselves to protect. And all these have solutions, by the way. And we're just kind of going through what are the main things that create neuroimmune problems. And then a dysfunctional bite. Now, obviously you say, oh, he's a dentist, he's got to get that in. This is a little bit different than that. When you have an overclosed bite or a dysfunctional bite, you're screwing up your cranial system. And at nighttime, that lymphatic system of your brain shrinks to about 50% of its volume, fills up with cerebral spinal fluid, and basically flushes out the brain. That's the way normal brains kind of reinvigorate themselves. But if you have a TMJ problem that's creating a cranial distortion, then that lymphatic system is hindered, and your brain's not going to brain's going to suffer. And dysautonomia, remember, that's our major thing. These are the causes of dysautonomia or neuroimmune system things, and these are the things that a dentist can deal with and needs to deal with. Do most dentists understand this? Absolutely not. Even a lot of biological dentists don't get this all the way. So let's go to the next slide. So we're talking here about since we're talking about critical mass, the idea here is to understand what we're up against. And I believe, I call it the medical industrial complex. Mark Avery, who's I think I so heartily and understand and agree with his teachings in this. He calls it a medical industrial matrix, same thing. So and what we're trying to understand here is what we have to do to create critical mass, and that is to create an integrative medical industrial complex, similar to what's already there, because that's something that will stand up and will basically be able to get traction in a little bit firmer ground. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on a little bit. And from my history, you understand is that HMOs and networks were something I got involved in early, got obviously disillusioned as the medical complex took it over. And I certainly understand how holistic people don't want any part of that. I got that. That's not what I'm trying to promote here, but I am trying to promote how we can get traction here. So if we look at the complex, obviously I don't have to go through this too much for everybody. I'll just highlight it. The medical industry teaches conventional medicine. Merck Manual puts it together. All their schools, their education, their delivery systems, especially as they create more and bigger delivery systems, promote that. Obviously, the boards are involved in that, and they will take holistic people and they will cut their heads off as best as they can. Big Pharma is involved in it. And of course, we got perverted organizations, professional organizations, and probably the worst I've been able to put up there is the American Academy of Pediatric Medicine, which can't give our younger kids enough vaccines. And they've showed their true colors by, I think they're suggesting that inter-utero vaccination of embryos for COVID was their latest thing. No, I made that. That's a joke, but you can, they can't get them earlier, can't give the vaccines early enough. So a fairly perverted group, to be honest with you. The government's involved, obviously all the consumer organizations involved. Media won't report the facts or doesn't or misreports it. The insurance companies are involved, but understand is that this whole thing is owned by the global complex, financial complex, the BlackRocks and the Morgan Stanleys. Next. So we obviously have a need for a change in the medical system. Change is inevitable. We know that. Change through grassroots is sometimes hard and slow. So the idea here is can we create a critical mass that survives the obvious pushback? Lots and lots of people understand what we just talked about, that change is inevitable. Mark Avery talks a lot about it, gives the facts. I totally agree. They can't really change the system so much anymore. They can't pay the doctors less. The system's overhead is such, they're not getting the results. Everybody understands there's an issue. However, remember what we're doing is we're changing a $9 trillion medical industry. Now, I've been through a change in the medical industry in the 60s and the 70s, mostly in the 70s. And that was a change in the payment. In the 70s, 100% of the payment was fee for service. Now, hardly any of it's fee for service. It's all managed care of some sort or another. And many, many things changed during that change in the way that healthcare was organized as well as healthcare was paid for. Not so much for the better. I totally understand that. So what we need to understand is that if we create a better product or service for less, that is the hallmark of what we can do. However, medical reform is how do we do medicine? And that's going to be the focus of what we're going to be talking about, because unless you understand philosophy and the integrative medical models, you can't create the synergy. You can't create the effectiveness that would be able to bring out or to bring forth a change that creates critical mass. That's my thinking. Obviously, medical delivery and medical payment are things that have already been tried, and there's very little vigorish in there to take care of that. So in Mark Avery's master class for health professionals, his model of health maintenance is something I have summarized at the bottom. In the beginning, he talks about, okay, you're in trouble, you need medical care, whether that's from a holistic practice or a conventional practice. But then over time, you're going to be having problems, but you're not going to have a diagnosis. So the functional healthcare system, and that's where you're going to need a holistic doctor that works for root causes. He becomes your health detector. But then wellness, as he so aptly describes, is 90% the patient's doing. In order to do that, that patient has to really be through a lot of the functional health care information system that doctor is going to provide. Now, understanding that, what I'm trying to do is to try to put a bigger system than an individual around this. And wellness, absolutely, in my mind's eye, understands that you are at the 203 or 303 level of practicing meditation. One of my big heroes is Joe Dispenza. We'll talk about him in a little bit later. Okay, next slide, please. So now, and this is kind of a little bit of changing course just a little bit here, just to talk about, to shake the tree a little bit and talk about how our whole system is really devolving. You know, what are we really doing to our kids? You know, in general, we're stealing their health. And I think all of us understand that. The health IQs are decreasing. I'm 75 years old. When I was born, there was no autism ever reported. Now 1 out of 30 are kids. Besides that, I can't remember anybody that was medically compromised nor were overweight. Now 9 out of 10 has some kind of medical condition. I mean, and it's increasing rapidly. Cancer, diabetes, mental issues, asthma, it's off the charts. So we're stealing their health, not really giving the attention it needs. The next thing we're doing is we're stealing their wealth. Never has a society spent so much money without war and passed the bill on to their kids. Obviously, I'm in Washington, D.C., as I think you are, Charles. We understand that very acutely about how, it's not even on people's plates. I know how much, who's going to have to pay for our spending. But more so, we're destroying their sense of morality. You know, whatever I feel is okay, anything for the cause. And in doing so, you're devolving the family, the community, the country, and religion. So, you know, it's shaking to me to understand that every generation in the history of the world has tried to leave the world a little better place. And certainly, I think we're failing there. So that's my little rant. And so I think we'll leave that part of it there. Now let's get into the meat of what we're talking about. So what's the solution here? This integrative medical industrial complex. What's the solution? First of all, I think one solution is an overall thing. We have to have a unified message. And that is, what is new medicine? And how does it work? There's going to be a lot of people getting involved in this, as we talked about. And I'm looking at this, you know, to present to you what a complex would look like. And of course, this is what we're working on too. So one is, you have to have a way for the consumer to pay for it. I love the idea, and you guys have been totally involved in this, and that is the cost sharing idea. It's a way of getting around the insurance companies, and then you can differentiate cost sharing even more so than I think it is now. I think initially it was a religious kind of thing. It was a religious thing, but now it's, you know, it's not necessarily religious, and go for it. The holistic primary care is the way to bridge the gap between the primary care needs of an individual or a family and the cost sharing, and you're right on board with that. So all we're looking to do is create a network of holistic primary care people that are connected. And we'll talk about that in a second. Well, actually, we'll talk about that right now. Because the network of integrated medical practitioners that can be bound together by outcome studies will and can create safety and success for the professionals, as well as the consumers who participate in this whole network. I'm doing something out. And so it's a way for us to document and create quality control for the medical care that we work with. Besides that, there's a tremendous amount of opportunities when people create a network together. So the next thing in this component here is an educational unit that basically attracts the best minds to teach and continually update the strategies. Now, we have had in the last 10, 20 years, many people that have come forward and you know, and say, hey, listen, I want to get involved in this. And you're basically teaching the basics of integrative medicine, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail coming up. And also the integrative medical programs, is how that's put together, how a diabetic program is put together, and creating a lot of individuality, but just basically being able to hit on all bases on that. So understand is that for the most part, doctors are involved with biochemical issues. And it's why don't we go ahead and well, let me finish up this slide, and then we'll go to the next slide. And then the next thing that it's absolutely required is a massive media organization that can push this unified message. That's patient education, that's website, that's movies, that's putting all this out on laying all this out for patients as well as professionals. So these four components: a way to pay for it, a network of integrated medical practitioners, an educational unit, and a massive media organization are critical for the components of an integrative medical industrial complex. Next slide. So we're coming back to dysautonomia and the autonomic nervous system. And there's a quote there that we've been working with for many years. Von Herring, understanding the autonomic nervous system will someday be the most important part of medicine. And I'm going to use that to talk about what I kind of introduced on the last slide. And that is, medical people understand biochemistry fairly well. So to go from a conventional medical person dealing with drugs to a integrative medical doctor dealing with nutraceuticals is not a big jump. That's an understood, and and there are many organizations. Jeff Bland's organization out in Seattle and others that are teaching doctors that, and they're doing a great job with that. We're not trying to displace that at all. However, integrative medicine, as we will see in a second, also involves this neurobiology or the physics of the human being, and it also can touch every level of the human being, and that's where doctors aren't as proficient. We're not saying that you need to be proficient in all this. We're just saying you need to create a group, whether it's outside of your walls or inside of your walls, and the awareness that these things exist and that's the way you're going to get the best outcomes. So let me go to the next slide here. So what we'd like to do now is to explore a couple integrative models. And these models we used them at Capital University, and I had 200 of the best and the biggest heads that the country or the world could offer as teachers. And all 200 pretty much understood that these models withstood the test of time. So I'm going to do two things here. One is I'm going to talk about a model of integrative medicine so you can understand really what I'm talking about as far as unified field and all that. Then I want to put it together in like an algorithm, which is going to understand how you can deal with it, how to create your thinking in this whole respect. So let's go ahead to the next. Since we're talking about chronic problems and diseases, two of my big mentors, Majid Ali, says is that all chronic problems have one thing in common: you're not able to work with oxygen as well. And so the body's inability to effectively and efficiently process ATP with oxygen. And that certainly is true in my opinion. And then Dr. Klinghardt, who's been my mentor, also talks about the autonomic nervous system's primary function is to control this extracellular matrix. And that's the blood flow dynamics that bring the cells together, the information, and all the organization that's involved in that. That becomes a central functional operating system that makes everything work. And when that's not working correctly, either on a general basis or on a localized basis, we call that dysautonomia. And those stresses that I talked about are the stresses that create dysautonomia. And these things have been worked out for 20, 30 years. So many of you probably already know what I'm talking about, but some of you, this may be new, and therefore then let's keep talking. So this is Klinghardt's model. It's a little bit hard to see, and I'm not going to go over the details of it, but here you see 5 layers of the human being. And this represents the phases or the levels or the stages of being a human. The first is the bottom, is the physical. That's your biochemistry and your anatomy, where your tissues are. And there's obviously diagnostic tools that we use in that, whether they're physical exams or laboratories or imaging. And then there's all the physical things we do for that, the biochemical things we do, whether it's vitamins and minerals or drugs or surgery, TMJ appliances, whatever that would be, physical manipulations. Above that, you have the energy system. And the energy system is best looked at as the functional nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, chakras, meridians, this whole electromagnetic spectrum of regulation. Obviously, that regulates the tissues. So we're dealing with a hierarchy of regulation here. And it has its feedback tools, muscle testing, which is what I am most accomplished in, but not only heart rate variability, thermography, many other things that basically stress the nervous system and then get information back from it. That's the way that works. There's, in the treatment of that, we're either giving electrons to the system, because this whole system works on electrons. Again, we could talk about this all day. I'm just trying to give you an overview. Or you can manipulate that through acupuncture, neural therapy. You can reprogram your nervous system's response. That's allergy elimination or some other energetic reprogramming tools. Above that, you have your mental system. That's your thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs. That's the little voice that keeps on talking to you at night, all the time. You don't have a thought, attitude, or belief without having an emotion, which is the second tier, without having a physical reaction. So that's the mind-body connection. And we have the ability through stress detector in the second level to basically figure out what's stressing you in the third level. Gives us a real great advantage to figure out your unresolved psychoemotional issues that are connected to a certain problem. Above that is Jung called it the fourth, or the ancients called it the fourth. Jung called it the dream body. That's the world of quantum physics. That's the world of photons, and in the world of where Sir Albert Fritz Popp has done such marvelous work on. Our therapies in there are family systems, karmic issues, and that's where, if you understand how to get to that level, that's where your deep meditation is. That's where you have control of your autonomic nervous system, by the way. And now once you control that, you control your healing. That's where I believe that wellness resides. Of course, you're not going to get there without taking care of the heavy metals and the toxic chemicals and your diet and the electromagnetic stress that's going on, and cleaning up your bowel, taking care of your fatty or your sluggish liver, going through that. That's the way you advance to that stage of wellness. So that's to kind of tie that in. Let's go to the next one. This is a little, I'm sure some of you may probably have seen this. This just gives you a little bit of understanding of the matrix. You see the cells at the top of the screen, the capillary or the blood vessel at the bottom of the screen, and these yellow things that are, these are the autonomic nerves. Vast amount of autonomic nerves, both afferent and efferent, motor and sensory, that operate this matrix, the extracellular matrix, which really is the command and control center for all your cells. And so much happens in that matrix. But I want to show you the intricately involved with that is your autonomic nervous system, both going to the brain, the afferent, and by the way, the afferent system of this, whether it's on the sympathetic or the parasympathetic side, is 80% of the capacity of the neurons in your functional nervous system, are afferent going to the brain. basically giving information of what's happening in this extracellular matrix and bringing it to the brain. And then the rest of it is operating the blood flow going to the area, the nutrient biophotonic transmission of nutrients to the cells. By the way, that's done by physics, not by chemistry, and all the other dynamics that operate this extracellular matrix. So let's go to the next slide. This is a model of integrative medicine, and it's more of an algorithm, sort of like a Merck manual to kind of understand how you approach something. On the left side of the screen, you have traditional medicine. This is what we learned as doctors, whether you're a medical doctor or chiropractic or whatever. You, first of all, had a certain model that you work with. The second of all, you took a history course, and then you did your assessments, usually physical in nature, and you came up with a pathology diagnosis, okay? On the other side, you have another model. I just gave you one of those. And you basically have a history that can be a little bit more involved to understand what was happening when, and piecing together what are the root causes of these issues that you're dealing with. The third is the functional assessments. Now, this can be broken into morphology, where you're just taking a look. A lot of Chinese medicine, looks at the tongue, at the nails, at other things, and gets an idea what's happening. Iridology looks at the eyes. Microscopy looks at the blood. There's a lot of different ways that you can assess the body through its holographic representations. But then you have this whole group of functional laboratory tests that, there's voluminous amount of that, and they are very, very good, often fairly expensive, but can tell you how the body's functioning, as well as pathology, of course. Then you have another group, which is the feedback tools, the autonomic nervous system biofeedback. We talked a little bit about that in a couple slides up. That's muscle testing, heart rate variability, meridian stress testing, and some of these testing tools are just phenomenal as far as giving you information, and others. And then there's homeopathy and genomics and other kind of things. So that basically is what rounds out your ability to assess. And then the last is what's the result of all that? Well, here comes our dysoxygenosis and dysautonomia, and these are the causes of that. We call them, we break them into 7 because 7 is kind of a biblical number. It could be 27. So obviously there's a lot of things that can be put in here, but it's, basically it's too much of the bad stuff, toxicity. And since we are in a toxic world, toxicity is rampant, all kinds. Then you have not enough of the good stuff. Obviously the foods that we're eating and the amount of detoxification we need isn't supplying the body with the minerals and the nutritional stuff to deal with that. And of course, lots of problems occur after that. You got your allergies, your hyperreaction, and you're to either the good or the bad. What you're going to understand is that the nervous system responds to the toxicities. In order for the toxicities to in order for the body to maintain itself, as much of its homeostasis or equilibrium, it's going to go through stages of homotoxicology. Those are man's toxins, very well established. 1940, Reckwick has, produced that for us. The first stage is detox, where you're going to pee it out, poop it out, sweat it out, bleed it out, give it to your kids, however you get the toxic stuff out. The second stage is inflammation, where you're kicking up the immune system. That's a lot done with for bugs. But the third stage is deposition. You're going to start storing it in the connective tissues. That's why I presented the extracellular matrix slide a couple slides before. or just before. In order to facilitate storage, your body's not going to want to grab that and take that through as much. So your detoxification of those toxins are not as well, because now you're in a I'm going to live with it stuff. That is going to get a lot of our patients in trouble, because as you start to detox, because you've identified, let's say, that they're mercury toxic, and you're starting to get the mercury out of their body, and let's say you're giving them something fairly strong like DMPS, and they react very strongly, they're not necessarily reacting because of the toxins. Well, they're reacting because the toxins are being pulled through, but their reaction is probably due, in fact, I will say mostly due to the hyperreaction that they're having to the metal that you're pulling through there. We've been dealing with that for the last 30 years. We've probably had, thousands and thousands of patients from many, many doctors. So we know that is true. Then that's there for mercury, heavy metals, that's there for lime and all the toxic or all the infestations. So that's something that understanding the neurobiology when you're detoxifying is critical. So that's just a aside. Then you got your psycho-emotional, psycho-spiritual stuff. You got your toxic foci. We've been over some of this stuff, the noxious energies and the TMJ that's screwing up the cranium. So that comes together in a integrative in strategies. And the next slide. So if you're talking about a comprehensive strategy for integrative medicine for any illness, you're going to say, okay, what are the physical things that I can do for that illness? The structural injuries that are going on. What are the electromagnetic problems this patient has, or the autonomic nervous system, this dysautonomia problems this patient has, and what can I do to take care of that? What are the biochemical issues that this patient has, whether they be toxic or whether they be lack of whatever, and what are the psycho-emotional, psycho-spiritual? Those four elements contain all of the ways that you can engage this human being. That becomes a comprehensive approach. If you understand how to go back, and if we go back to the slide of the triangle for Klinghardt, Charles. If you understand that and you're seeing somebody, let's say, coming in for diabetes, let's say, and they're coming from somebody who has done a lot of work with the biochemistry, with the nutrition, with have them stabilized, still are there on insulin, and you're looking at what else can we be doing here. Well, the way this model looks at is that if you have done everything or have done good work, or somebody else preceding you has done good work in one level and you're not getting the results, you jump up to the next level. So you understand or explore what is the celiac ganglia's contribution to this, or what is the hyperreaction of the system reaction to this, and to try to balance out, because homeostasis is all five of these components working together, not just one. And so, and above that, you can look at the unresolved psycho-emotional spiritual issues that are contributing to that. So that's how a integrative mind can work. Not that everybody has to work like that, but you know that if you get to a certain point and you don't get resolution, then you have other ways that you can move up the scale. So let's go down to we'll go back to the original four components, and you can see that this works off of the threshold. You have so much of the bad stuff on the left side and not enough of the good stuff on the right side. Eventually, you're going to get ill, and you start to work off on any of those issues on the left side to basically bring you back into homeostasis. So that's how that model looks at. So if we go to the next level, this is my friend Jim Graypeck, and I think he's probably presented this. This is his or our rendition of the pavilion, which is hopefully soon to be built. And this is where we're putting a lot of these things together at the same time. So I'm basically, proud to be part of this. We go to the next slide. The BioCenter is where integrative medicine, comprehensive integrative medicine is there, as well as understanding what we, a very strong primary care part of that, because obviously the primary care brings the patients through. So what is, next slide. Now this is the delivery systems. So what are we looking for in a delivery system? Now remember what I said is that we need to create critical mass. My understanding is that there will be certain places where there will be centers where we'll be able to provide the things that we're talking about, whether through the pavilion or through different groups that are that say, okay, let's go ahead and do this. Let's get involved in all the components of integrative medicine, and let's get involved in all these things we're doing. Actually, what we're doing right now in Middle Pennsylvania is just this. So a comprehensive center will have functional medical and energetic assessment, and be able to interact with anybody that's in the network in the field. It's sort of like, if you can't deal with it, you can send them to the center, and it's a safe place to go, and you're going to get your patient back. You're going to have advanced healing injury with lots of different kinds of PEMFs, frequency specific microcurrent, IV therapies, hyperbaric therapies, lots of stuff like that. Advanced detox centers. And again, all of these things are going to be out for the whole network to understand. But if they can't do it because of facilities, then this could do it. You're going to be able to have to be very good with chronic infestations. We recognize that many of our problems are, Lyme, Epstein-Barr, whatever it would be. And there's ways that we can resolve all of that. And then we would have holistic surgery centers, whether you're doing plastic surgery, whether you're doing implants, whether you're doing dermatology, whether you're doing joint issues or other things. I believe that primary care for adults and kids is critical. And you're going to have other professions like dentistry. Heck, I didn't even have dentistry in there. Oh, yes, I did. I had dental. Dentistry, optometry, and other things, where basically you have birds of a feather flock. One person coming in for medicine becomes a dental, becomes a patient for the biological dentist, and vice versa. So that's kind of that's one of the things that we're involved in. Let's go to the next slide.
And Dr. McClure,
yeah.
we do have only a few minutes left. We would like to have time for questions if that's possible.
Well, then let's go to, let me go to the last one. So then I just want to say, so therefore then we got programs. Programs are such where you have the problem, whether it's cancer, cardiovascular, whatever, we have the ability, kind of like a Merck manual, to say, these are the things that you can choose from in this an arena. And if you can't do it, then somebody else can chip in. If we create outcomes, effective and efficient outcomes, we then have the tools to be able to market this, as well as withstand any kind of problems. And that's kind of that was my presentation. So the rest of it they can look at. So go ahead.
Fantastic.
And Charles Ford, do you have your hand up?
What's that?
Yes, I do. Thank you. A couple of questions that, what you're talking about is some kind of metaphysical complexity and my simple mind can't even begin to go to. So I can't even address all of that. Don't even want to try, but I admire what you're trying to do. First off, is that, when did the practice of dentistry go downhill? And the answer to that question is when they came out with the first group dental program. Yeah. So if you want to fix dentistry, a good place to begin is remove fluoride from the water. And the second place to begin is end all third-party payments. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts were about that.
Well, absolutely. I totally agree. This is where being involved in that, I saw firsthand, Charles, the perversion. And are you a dentist?
Oh, I'm a retired risk manager. I used to try to deal with the cost of dentistry.
Okay. Well, dentistry, we've been screwing up in dentistry for a long, long time. I mean, mercury is one of those. Is terrible. Then, I mean, you just add fluoride to it. And man, I mean, we've been terrible about that. I do believe that, this model that I'm working with, when you talk about a network banding together and creating that all together, I think that where this differs is that the participants own the network. Because if you in understanding critical mass, you have to have critical strength. And you're not going to get critical strength if you're individual. You can retain individualism in every way, but you're not going to be able to have, 20,000 dentists individually or physicians and create a model like this to basically take a $1 trillion business or a $9 trillion business and have 1/4 of it for those that want it. And it's going to require an infrastructure. I mean, we've been working with this for a long time, and actually it's being built right now. So I think the best way of understanding it is to see it. I presented something abstract to you right now, but in order to see these components is critical. But I will totally agree with you, is that one of the things that we in dentistry did better than physicians is that we did stay independent, whereas physicians went full force into HMOs and now they're all absorbed mostly into big groups. So that's the perversion that occurred there. I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, thank you for your input. I appreciate it.
I'll add also to facilitate cash payments of dental and most other out-of-pocket, a lot of agents are selling health savings accounts for one thing, which is good for a lot of the natural expensive tests you mentioned. And then the money doubling health matching account is really good for dental, especially as dental expenses ratchet up. You can cut those in half by building your money over 3 years with an HMA that I sell as a licensed health insurance agent.
Absolutely. I think that's great. What we're trying to do is reduce the cost too. And I didn't go over how that's reduced with not delving into all these expensive tests right in the way, when common sense is just a few things. And
right.
Then get into the common sense stuff. And if you can measure, see, if I got 10,000 or 100,000 diabetic patients tied into a network, and I'm measuring the clinical effectiveness of each person's input, as well as the cost efficiency of that, and then feed that back each month to that network of doctors that are dealing with that, I not only have an incredible marketing tool. Wow, this only costs this much, when over here it costs that much, but I have a very effective quality control tool.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was a question I was going to have for you, which is outcomes. Dr. Charles Benz, who presented with us a lot before he passed away, complained about the dearth of outcomes in the healthcare system. So if you could use that scale to measure outcomes and save people money and give them higher quality treatments, that's a huge game changer.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you, Charles. And we're on the same page with that. And the thing is that if you go to let's face it, businesses are interested in the bottom line. And healthcare was one of their biggest expenditures. If I can go to a healthcare, I'm sitting right across the street from 5,000 people over in Geico. If I can go to Geico and show them that I don't need everybody, if you let me present this new system that's going to cost them less and give them better results, I'm going to have a lot of people coming. I know that because and I'm talking as a marketing person, in the 70s when we did this HMO thing, I had 300 new patients coming through my door each month. Couldn't handle that, way over, but my point is that that's the volume that can happen. Now with that, all we are really trying to do is to create safety and success for doctors and their patients. And if we can do that, then we can create critical mass in numbers by producing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and Mark Aubrey is on, if he could unmute, and maybe Mark, why don't you remind Mark Aubrey how you mentioned him in your slides. Before you do that, I'm sharing the screen for National Health Federation's monthly Zoom tomorrow. I'll put that in chat. We will have the FDA's attack on homeopathy, which Mark also mentioned. So that's noon, same time tomorrow. I'll put that in chat. Also, I'll mention that Freedom Hub, the sponsor of the show, does promote a couple of ventures that help with our discussion today. One is Genexi, which is a functional assessment using AI. That's what Dr. Charles Bentz was promoting. And it was started by Joe Pizzorno from Bassler University. And that's something that you would try to get a Geico or employer to use to upgrade the quality and behavior of their patients and using functional medicine, not just pushing pills to get healthy. And then here's the Catch Appointments app where everyone can join and start to cash transactions, which lead to more integrated care. And I'll stop sharing there if Mark Aubrey wants to comment on coaching these doctors to join this. Hold on, Linda, please. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, just 3 quick things. I promise they'll be quick. The first thing is that we need multiple systems. Part of what Dr. McClure is talking about and all of these other systems, what we need is we need competition in the marketplace. Multiple systems competing to try and give the best for the patients. The second thing is that what we found, if you look at life and what has changed, it's not the big changes that have the greatest impacts on life. It's incremental changes. So we have to constantly, every day, be moving towards systems like Dr. McClure is describing, or the systems that my companies run. And the third thing is, and this is usually the thing that blows people's mind because we have been indoctrinated for the last 100 years that it's not. The first thing that we have to do, and Dr. McClure just said it a few moments ago, you have to take care of the health professional. Health professional is number one. I'm not saying they need to be greedy. I'm saying they need to be self-interested. They need to take care of themselves, take care of their health, take care of their business, make sure that they're getting what they need, because you can't kill the health professional while you're trying to save the patient. And that's what the current system is doing. That's my comments there.
Well, thank
Charles,
you,
I have to take quickly something, please, because I have to leave.
Go ahead, Linda.
Yes. Congratulations, excellent lecture. I follow Dietrich Klinghardt for many, many years, every week. And please try to watch the presentation of Kennedy in Boston yesterday. He made a wonderful presentation of the health system in the United States, as you did. Fantastic. So the only hope in this country to survive and his people is if this Kennedy, before to be executed or killed, become president. That's my point. And please add in your holistic health the grounding or earthing method, which works. Thank you.
Before you respond, Mark, or real quick, also in that link for NHF Zoom tomorrow, we have Jonathan E. Mort running for Senate. He sued the FDA on nutrient-free speech rights. Why don't you comment on all that you've heard, Dr. Mark McClure, Mark Aubrey's point about coaching, the various integrated doctors up to really get scale in this market. Linda's valid point about Mr. Kennedy's fantastic speech yesterday, him against Trump or whoever the LP puts up. I substacked about the embarrassment of riches we'll have with fantastic candidates for health freedom.
No, well, Robert Kennedy is somebody that's lived it and has promoted it. I've read his book. He's right on board with what's going on. It'd be nice to, whether he's going to be the Democratic candidate or not, he's going to upset the apple cart in what he has to say, and they're not going to be able to put him into an envelope and seal it up. So whatever occurs, and I don't have a crystal ball to know, I think his entry into the field is going to be only good for us. So that's what, as far as my friend Mark Abry, I totally agree with him. I think competition as much as we can. What I'm just trying to do is trying to bring together what the full understanding of integrative medicine is and give that out. This isn't proprietary. This is for anybody to understand and to come and to move forward with. And I do think, I totally agree with all his points that he made.
And being out of time, why don't you give your closing thought, Mark, and how folks can reach you?
Well, my name is Mark McClure. You can reach me on my email is drmark.mcclure, MCCLURE @gmail.com. That's one way. I mean, if you want to phone me, I'm at.
No need to put your phone number out. The email is fine. And what's
Okay.
your big closing thought? What's the significance of what you said today?
Well, the significance is this, is that we know medicine is broken. We've been very much trying to change this. We are up against an industrial complex that doesn't play clean and that has lots of things at their disposal. I believe that we need to create a integrative complex, and hopefully there's many, but that's the way that you get strong enough in order to effectively fight back. You need to create every one of those things. That network with outcomes delivery is critical. It's not going to work otherwise. Otherwise, nothing's going to, you can't prove that. You get caught in that morass. If it's not going to go that way, then it's going to be a slower road. That's my experience, and that's what we're working on. And I'll join you, you join me, because nobody owns this. This is the best we offer. Everybody offers the best they can, and we're all on the same team.